be round a champion, a champion. This is me, I still on it, 'cause you all wanna be loved. Yeah, you all wanna be loved.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Crimson Dynasty. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. We've made it through half the week already. I do want to welcome everyone, those who are new here and also those who have been here before, our loyal supporters. My name is Sishi, and I am the host of the Crimson Dynasty, which is essentially a sister channel of the Bama Standard that I know a lot of you are familiar with. I hope that y'all kind of get familiar with my face and, the way I kind of like to break things down. Kind of get below the surface. So we have a very exciting show tonight. We actually have two guests that are going to join us shortly. One of which I know that everyone will remember. You better remember him. Another one who y'all will get to know. But I do want to start by giving a shout out to our sponsor, Workspace Solutions. So we love to partner with them. Essentially, if your business needs any type of digital presence or even a full-fledged marketing team at an affordable price, be sure to contact them. You can go online, Google them, just look at what they have to offer. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to them directly. Now, as I mentioned, we have us a full line of things to talk about today. I'm excited. I know that a lot of you are excited. Some people are still kind of like scratching their heads, but I do think that we have some good things to talk about. So I first want to just kind of give an overview of what I saw in our game against Mississippi State. Now, I guess, from a high level, I am happy with what I saw across the board, even with Coach Saban and him just kind of getting back to that, that attitude. The attitude that we're used to seeing, but I'm going to get to that later. So the first thing that I kind of want to call out is the fact that, our game against Mississippi State, it did start out a little shaky. I know there were a couple things, just a couple, I would say mental errors for the most part. But I did notice still some struggles at center. And it had me, really feeling some type of way because Seth is not, new. He's not a freshman. He's not a sophomore. He's been here for a few years, and so, and what I'm seeing with him, it's not him. We didn't really have these type of issues last year. And so I'm not quite sure what's going on with him. I don't know if maybe his mind is in a different place. It kind of seems that way at times. I know, in our game against like USF or even Texas, it kind of came down to maybe him, blocking, maybe helping Dalcourt with some of his blocks. But, at this point, I'm not really sure what's going on. I honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Terrence Ferguson at that position. I know that he can play center, he can play left guard. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we possibly see Terrence Ferguson out there at center. We do need to see some type of change. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to take per se. Because like I said, these are uncharacteristic errors that we're seeing him make. And so I definitely want to see some changes there. Now, I'll say that, although Jalen Milroe got sacked 4 times in the game, our O-line still looked better than it has been over the last few weeks. When you look at everything holistically, I would say that our O-line looked better. I do think that, and I have to give kudos to Jalen Milroe because I know that it's been a lot of negativity. Even all the way back to last year, let's be honest, but he's been getting a lot of heat and it's been a lot of pressure. And I know on the outside looking in, we can speak on it all day long, but it's not the same when you're actually there living it, and so I have to give kudos to Jalen Milroe, for one, when you really think about this, his first year as a true starter, right? And so we have, our first game and then we played Texas. And so that didn't, look that great, but that's what we needed. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but like I said before, you want to, if you're going to have those type of issues, it's better to have it early on in the season to where you have time to adjust. Like I said, we have this stretch of 7 SEC games back to back, and we're in that right now. And so I like how Jalen has stepped up to the plate and to the challenge as a leader, and he's really taking it on. It's not easy to go out there in front of hundreds of thousands of people, along with whoever is watching on TV and silence and block out the noise and perform at a high level. I think that what we saw from Jalen Milroe against Mississippi State, he looked excellent out there. He may have had a couple, I still would say mental errors. I think that his confidence is a lot better. I didn't really see him trying to force the ball like we had seen a couple times before. And I like his decision making. I think decision making is a lot better than what we've been seeing. I mean, when you really think about it, look at his numbers, right? I think he was 10 for 12 if I remember correctly. Not a lot of passing yards, and I do remember the commentators mentioning something about that. I didn't really feel any type of way because I felt like our strategy shouldn't have been throwing the ball all over the field. Maybe some of those shorter passes, which we saw, but not necessarily down the field. And so I think as far as strategy and play calling, it was good. With Tommy Rees, the play calling was good. Now Jalen Milroe actually had the most rushing yards, and rightfully so. And I think that kind of ties into decision making. We have to, a lot of times when I'm watching him, I'm thinking about Jalen Hurts. He looks like him out there on the field. And I like the vision. I like the quick decision making because he's a dual threat quarterback, because he's good with his legs. I'm okay with him using them. I know that sometimes we may look at it like, okay, well, why go out there and recruit 5-star running backs if you're just going to run your quarterback? But if that's something that he excels in, we need to use that to our, any other team would use it to their advantage. So I think that we need to capitalize off of that. And I think that, that would put him in a better situation to where he's not wasting time trying to scan the field and find an open receiver. No, when you find those holes, you get in there and you take advantage of it. So I like that, he's improving week after week after week. His decision making, just overall football IQ, I think he's doing a great job. And so I did want to say that. Now, I mentioned our running and, all the running that Jalen Milroe did, but we also have to give kudos to Jase McClellan and Roydell Williams. I mean, they've been consistent every single game, that every time they touch that field, of course the defenses, they tend to kind of know who may get the ball. And that's why I keep, harping on Justice Haynes and Jam Miller. We need to get them out there more. But Jase McClellan, just the way that he runs and him being able to, even when it looks like they're getting him down, he's like, nah, I'm about to get these extra couple of yards, because it definitely makes the world of a difference. Roydell Williams, I like to call him Boston Scott, but I was happy to see Justice Haynes out there now. That's who I've been wanting to see. It doesn't make sense to me why we haven't seen him as much, but the only thing that I can really think of, you have this 5-star running back, Justice Haynes, out of the state of Georgia, heavily recruited. We know that he has the size. I think that he has the football IQ as well. I think that he's going to be another leader on the team. Maybe not next year, or not this year, but maybe next year. But I do think that maybe it just took him a little time to kind of get adjusted to, the system. And so I like that we're seeing him out there a little more. I think that Jam Miller only had 1 carry in our game against Mississippi State. I'm not sure why, but he's a guy, I've been talking about him. I talked about him a lot last year on other shows. He's someone that I personally want to see out there more, and not just for show, but for him to actually get his hands on the ball, because last year easily averaging at least 6 yards per carry. I mean, to me, if we're on if it's a 3rd down, even a 4th down, and we want to run the ball, I would give him the ball, so I do think that overall Tommy Rees is doing a better job at play calling. And I think along with that comes, maybe him understanding the skill set of the players, not trying to get them to be something that they're not, but understanding, hey, okay, this particular guy, he's good at this, maybe he's a little weaker in this area. But think about, the years where we had those really good running backs and receivers, and they were just really exposing the defense. Pretty much every team that we would play. It wasn't just that they were just, some of them were really elite, but I think a lot of that has to do with coaching too, and knowing how to essentially highlight and leverage the skill set that they have, to where someone looking on the outside, looking in from the outside, they don't necessarily catch on to maybe some of their weaknesses, because we're highlighting and exposing their strengths. I do think that Tommy Rees is doing a better job in terms of play calling. Now, if I talk about the defense, honestly, you really can't even it's hard to really just mention every single guy, because they've been doing so well. But if I were to name a few, I mean, I would say, for one, Jahad Campbell. He went out there, he ate, he left no crumbs. Jahad Campbell, he showed out. I think Trez Marshall, Justin Eboigbe, Tim Keenan, Dallas Turner, all those guys in the secondary too. I mean, we did see Coach Saban kind of light into Terrion Arnold a little bit, but I think that that's the Coach Saban that we're used to, the Coach Saban that holds the guys accountable, and I think that that's what they need. And so, but I think guys like Terrion Arnold, he's a leader. I think that he's one of those guys where, he's a smart guy intellectually, but he's also a leader on the field, to where I don't think that something like that moment is not going to necessarily, affect him in a negative way. If anything, he'll play up to that and do better. And so not that he really needed to, but I am proud of our secondary, whether it was Malachi Moore, he was physical all night, Kool-Aid, Jalen Key, all those guys, Terrion Arnold, but Caleb Downs, like he is literally, to me, he's like that prototype. He's like that type of guy on the defense that any team would love to have, including the NFL. And this guy is a freshman. He's another freshman out of the state of Georgia, and he is awesome. Like, honestly, when I was thinking about him, I'm like, man, Caleb Downs went out there and he did what Caleb Downs do. I mean, I think he's literally setting a standard, his own standard, in a sense, to where we expect him to play at a certain level, and he's going to deliver every single time. And so I'm proud of Caleb Downs. I think that coming into a D1 school as big as Alabama, and that has the type of reputation and standard and the statistics that we have in terms of sports and football in particular, that could be a lot. That could be a lot of pressure. And so I am happy for, Caleb Downs and all those freshmen who are getting in there, even the freshmen that came in last year that maybe didn't get a lot of playing time, the ones who are getting out there now. I'm happy to see that they're not only getting out there, but they're actually delivering. And so that's really what we want to see. And so I'm proud of our defense. Kevin Still, he's been doing a great job. And I think the players on defense, they feel that trust from him. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like it's like that respect that you would have maybe for like a parent or like maybe a professor or a teacher that holds you accountable, to where what that standard is and what that expectation is. It's nothing to question. You just know that you need to get out there and you need to deliver, and you want to make them proud too. And so I just think that that's where our defense is. There were maybe a couple missed tackles, but nothing to the point where I was just I was questioning like what's going on. It didn't get to that moment. And so I'm very proud of our defense. I like that camaraderie that we see with them, just that brotherhood. That's what we needed to get back to. It doesn't need to be guys getting out there more so worried about or focused on their individual stats. Because at the end of the day, when you're out there and every single player is playing at 110%, you will get out there, you will dominate, and you will succeed. So I think that the team, particularly on the defense, they are moving as one collective unit. I think the offense is getting there. I think that we are seeing improvement, slowly but surely on the O-line, but I'm happy with what I'm seeing. And I do want to give a shout out to Gerard Jackboy for the donation. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for your support. And everyone who's in the live chat right now, y'all need to fire that thing up, because we have guests coming on soon and we don't want no weak chat. Like we don't do weak over here. So y'all need to light up that chat. Y'all see my new microphone. It's really not new. I use it for voiceovers, and I just needed to get like the right mount and all that good stuff for it. So it definitely feels a lot better. And I think I'll be able to kind of interact and engage with everyone a little more. So just jumping back into what I was, discussing, and I want to hurry up and touch on certain things before our guest joins. But one thing in particular, I did remember hearing the commentators talk about, they said something about not really seeing the wide receivers, out there and playing to some degree like what we're used to, right? When we had like Devontae Smith out there, Jerry Jeudy, all of the guys, John Mechie, everyone, Jameson Williams. But one thing that I wanted to mention is that a part of good coaching, a part of solid coaching, is not just knowing your team per se, but it's knowing the opponent, the team that you're playing up against, because you can't have the same strategy every single game. I didn't expect us to be throwing all downfield when we play Mississippi State, and I think that it's very, it's more so dependent on who we're going up against. I think we will see, more of our wide receivers. We have seen them, we've seen Jermaine Burton get out there. We saw him be consistent, show up, play at 110%. We've seen Isaiah Bond get out there. I mean, we've seen our guys. I think we even saw, Kobe Prentice a couple times, Kendrick Law, all of them. Now, in our game against Mississippi State, we did see Malik Benson get out there, and he looked great. Even our tight ends, for those shorter passes, CJ Dupree, that's my guy. I'm proud of him. He's the transfer from Maryland, and he's been playing well consistently pretty much this entire season. And I think starting out at the beginning of the season, we saw, them using him more for blocking, but I didn't like that. And I kept saying, you know what, he needs to get his hands on that ball. This guy is physical. He can catch really well. He'll drag those guys down that field. And so I'm glad to see him getting his hands on the ball. I think Amari Nyblack, he looked really great out there as well. And so I just think, the tight ends, this is what we want to see. I keep talking about, Joe Cox and how well he's doing, that depth that we have at the tight end position. And honestly, I would like to see it continue to grow. I think next year, look, y'all think our recruiting class this year was good. Wait, 2024, I don't know if y'all been keeping up with it, but like the guys that we have coming in 2024 and even 2025, like it's going to be crazy. It's going to get crazy. I think that at least what I'm seeing like that 2008, 2009 recruiting class period where, I mean, everybody, they were just dogs. Like, I mean, it was almost like they came in on an empty stomach because everybody wanted to eat. And we ate. We literally ate. I'm talking about championship after literally 4 years back to back of the national championship being in the state of Alabama. Alabama 2009, Auburn 2010, Alabama 2011, and Alabama 2012. Like, can't nobody check me on that because I'm gonna read them their rights. Like, we've been doing this, when it was the BCS, we've been doing this, and we're gonna continue doing it. So I think that the way that we've been recruiting, it says a lot. Like, for us to be able to go into the state of Georgia after they won the so-called national championship, because technically to me, if Alabama wasn't in the playoffs last year, the championship game was Georgia and Ohio State. It wasn't Georgia and TCU. I think that was probably, statistically and looking at the numbers and the financial side of it, that was probably one of the worst games because it wasn't the right matchup. However, for us to get 5-star recruits out of the state of Georgia after they just won the national, to me, that speaks volumes. It says a lot about Alabama. We got talked about really badly last year. And I think it's because even people who are not fans of Alabama, people who just outright hate Alabama, they still know what it is. They know the history of Alabama. And you can't deny 18 national. I mean, we've been doing this. And so I just think that this is the season where everything all comes together. We still have an opportunity, in my mind, to make it to, the playoffs. I believe that we will. I think that because we took that L so early in the season, I know that it came as a surprise to really all of us. Honestly, I think even for the players and maybe even for Coach Saban, they were probably sitting up there like, what just happened? Like, it was a surprise, but to be honest, I didn't feel the way that you would imagine someone to feel after a loss. I didn't necessarily feel like that. I felt like it was more so an opportunity, and I'm glad that the guys stepped up to the challenge because it's been a lot of rat poison. And now you got, Coach Saban. I mean, he's like we got that dog coming out of him, and I'm happy to see it. But one thing that I do want to mention and shout out is Coach Saban's wife, Terry, because what I'm hearing is that she's been holding him accountable. And I always say that, leadership and accountability, it starts at the top. It's beyond just the players. I think that sometimes, on the fan side of things, fans tend to kind of hone in on the players where they should have done this or they didn't do this. But I think that it starts at the top. You get to the coaches, the assistants, all of them, but even Coach Saban. But someone has to hold Coach Saban accountable. And thank you to his wife. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you continue to do so. I think that we need that. I think that, it's just that expectation, I just think that we have to get back to that. And these guys need to remember that everything is earned. It doesn't matter how good you are coming out of college or out of high school. You still have to earn your spot. You have to show up at 110% every single game and even in practice. So I just think that we're in a really good position. I don't foresee. Personally, I don't foresee us losing any other games. I think that we may have some, pretty tight games to some degree. I think that, I don't think that all is lost. Now, I do think that, we were exposed a little bit, even looking at our O-line, looking at our center, looking at different position groups. But I expect to see improvement every single week. And I think that, it's one thing to look good in an 8A game, in a scrimmage game, or fall camp, for example, but none of that matters really when you turn those lights on and you have a stadium full of 100,000 people, maybe a percentage of them that don't even like you and that want to see you fail. That's when it really matters, and that's when you need to show up. And so I think that we have a lot of good things in front of us, ahead of us. To be honest, I am biased, and I am gonna always want to see us make it. I think because personally I see what we have. I know that we have, if anyone has the ability, we do. We have the talent, we have the coaching, we have the heart, we have the drive, we have it, we have all of that. We just need to put all of it together and make something great out of it. So I know that right now we're ranked number 11. I don't feel any type of way about it. I think that it's one of those things where we continue to improve week after week. We're not worried about outside noise. We're not trying to keep up with everybody else. Now, for me, from an analytical perspective, I'm going to keep everything in perspective, but I'm going to keep up with where other teams are as well. And so I do think that just kind of looking at those 10 teams ahead of us, I definitely think that there is, and I hate to say it like this, but I'm going to say it, there is opportunity for us to, continue to move up and make it in the top 4. I think that I believe the playoff committee, they don't, produce their first rankings, their initial rankings until I think the last week in October, maybe like October 31st. And so there are some very notable games before that, and even after that, that I think that we need to pay attention to. I think, when you look at like the top 4 teams, you look at Georgia, for example, if you've been paying attention to Georgia, they've been struggling. I think they kind of struggled against UAB. They've been starting their games pretty slowly. I think that a team that's coached properly, if they're coached properly, a team can actually get a good lead on Georgia. And I think that they have an opportunity, any team, to beat them for the most part, especially an SEC team. And I say that because like this weekend, for instance, I believe Georgia plays Kentucky at home. Now, we know Kentucky just beat Florida, and it was a pretty good win. That was a really good game. I think that really anything is possible at this point. Now, Georgia may have home field advantage, but the fact that even when I think they play UAB at home, for example, and just having those slow starts and just trying to get into the groove of things, I think that teams that are coached properly, they can capitalize off of that. So they have Kentucky this upcoming weekend. They still have to play Florida, Missouri. They still have Ole Miss. They play all of them back to back to back, and I believe all of those are home games. But then they have Tennessee towards the end of the season. I think that they're playing that at Tennessee, so that's going to be a great game. I definitely think that there are opportunities for Alabama to continue to creep back in, because we have to remember, I don't think Florida is ranked anymore. I'm not sure if Missouri is ranked, and I don't know if Ole Miss, they may be ranked now that they beat LSU, but anything could happen to where even if it's a team in the top 4, if they're playing an unranked team, then, and they're not playing well, they're not showing up well, they could drop. So I definitely think that there are opportunities for Alabama to continue to creep back up into the top 10 and, subsequently end up back in the top 4. Now, I will say, looking at Michigan, for example, I think they have Minnesota this weekend, and they're playing at Minnesota, and it's a night game. Now, Minnesota, technically they've lost 2 games, but I don't necessarily think that that's, we can't just kind of throw them to the side per se. I do think that, Minnesota is gonna they're gonna come hungry. I think that if any game that they have this season, that's gonna be a game that they've been preparing for. And so don't be surprised if you see a tight, close game. They're playing at Minnesota. Minnesota may feel like they don't have really anything to lose. And so I think that that's going to be a very interesting game. Michigan still has Penn State. They still have Maryland. Both those games are away games. And so I believe Maryland is 5-0 at this point. I think Tua's brother is still playing there as well. And so, and of course, Michigan's last game is Ohio State, which is a home game for Michigan. So of course, that game is always, a toss up, and it kind of depends on where both of them are sitting in terms of rankings at that time. But, in terms of like Georgia and Michigan, there are opportunities for them to lose at least a game or 2, or maybe come really close to an unranked team to where, they may drop in their rankings. So, I think that there are opportunities. I know that it may feel like a stretch, but keep in mind, if I remember correctly, I think the last time that we lost a game really early in the season, maybe it was like that 2015. It was one of the seasons where we ended up, I think we were out of the top 10, but we slowly crept back in and we ended up winning the national championship. And so that's why I say all is not lost. Like we look at Texas, for example, they're playing Oklahoma this weekend. Now they're playing at Texas. And so, of course, you know, they're going to have home field advantage, but that's a big rivalry game. And so I think that anything could happen. Oklahoma is 5-0 going into this game. And so I think that that game is going to come down to whichever team is coached better and whichever team has the better defense in that game. I think that's going to be a good game. But we have to keep in mind, you know, Texas still has Kansas State. They still have Texas Tech. So I think that those are going to be some key games for them as well. I do see a question for Sishi. Bama has gotten off to very slow starts. What do you see as the issue for the offense to not get things rolling from the first series and maybe it this week? And thank you, Don Parker, for your question. You know, in regards to the slow starts, I agree with you. A part of it, I think, is just them kind of getting in sync. You see that sometimes, you know, even with other teams that, you know, having like that first drive, maybe the first, you know, maybe one or two drives, you know, sometimes it can kind of, you know, you want to kind of get that balance and get a feel for the defense. I think that could be that could be, you know, maybe a part of it. I think maybe just getting Jalen out there. And a part of it too is because we know Jalen missed that USF game. And so the last few games have been him kind of getting out there and kind of getting a rhythm, you know, going. But I do think that we're going to see those slow starts, you know, maybe slow up a little bit more. Hopefully we won't see that as much. But it sounds like we do have one of our guests who's ready to join. So we can go ahead and bring him in. Let's see. About to come on. Okay. So our first guest, this is Jalston Fowler. Now a lot of us remember him. You know, he was a part of the 2016 class. He was number 45. He was one of our running backs. He's actually a fullback. And so I do want to, let's go ahead and bring him in.
What's up?
Hey, Jalston, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to have you on. It's good to see you, man. Look, every time I think about our previous classes, like y'all were some dogs. So I was excited to get you on. You know, we remember that number 45, the fullback, all the touchdowns you got at Alabama. And I do kind of want to give, you know, maybe for some of the fans who may not necessarily remember you, or maybe they're younger, they don't remember you. I do kind of want to give everyone a quick introduction to who you are. So like I said, this is Jalston Fowler. He was one of our running backs and he was a part of the 09 recruiting class. So just to put that into perspective, that was the same class as Eddie Lacy. I think Dre Kirkpatrick, Trent Richardson, AJ McCarron. So we were loaded, and we were loaded, you know, year after year after year after that. But I do want to just kind of highlight that, you know, you were drafted to the Tennessee Titans in 2015. I believe you went on to play with the Seattle Seahawks. You went to the Falcons very briefly, but then you ended back up at the Tennessee Titans in 2018. So it's a pleasure to have you. I do think I remember your nickname, Nudie.
Oh yeah.
So I did want to mention that. How you been doing, man? How's everything going on your side?
I've been doing good. Just working down on the state docks. And coaching in league football. Actually, we got a couple big games coming up this weekend.
Okay. Now, how are you liking that, being more so on the coaching side of things? How does that feel for you?
It's a lot of fun. These kids are coachable, and they do whatever we tell them to do. I mean, that's what we're headed. I'm headed there now on the football practice.
Okay, nice. Well, we appreciate your time. Now, I do want to really quickly get your perspective, you know, especially in terms of offense, what you're seeing. I know you probably like what you're seeing with Jase McClellan and Roydell Williams from a running back, you know, position perspective. But how do you feel with where we are right now as a team, but specifically on the offensive side of the ball?
What I just tell everybody, man, we just got to continue to get better every week. Like, it's an ongoing process. I mean, we started off rough. Now things look like they're starting to come together. And, from an offensive standpoint, I just think we just need to keep working. I mean, like you say, it's a work in progress, and the guys just need to just just focus on getting better and just working every day and getting better.
Right. What do you feel about, I guess, like the play calling that you're seeing? Do you feel like some of the plays are more so what the guys feel like they can do comfortably with what they're seeing on the field at that moment? Or do you feel like it's more so maybe the coaching, trying to get a feel for,
My biggest thing is what I'm hearing is like Coach Saban want his offense ran the way he wanted ran, and I feel like you bring an offensive coordinator in, you should let him run it how he wants to run it. I mean, but you still incorporate some of the old stuff that Coach Saban wants to run. I feel like I said, you got to let an OC be an OC, offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not a huge fan of the coordinators being in that box. I know, some of the viewers right now, they hear me talk about that all the time. Now, when you were there, I don't recall our OC being in that box. He was pretty much on that field. Do you think that plays into how the offense shows up on the field and how they play?
Oh yeah, I mean, some of the coaches stayed in the box, but my guy was Kiffin. He's right down the field to let you know like what you were doing wrong and what we needed to do better. If you wanted to fake a specific way or wanted you to run a pass a specific way, he was there to teach you and tell you like how it should be ran. And I think the OC need to come out of the box and basically, like I say, Coach Saban also need to free him up and let him do what he needs to do as an OC.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really good point too. I think that, a lot of times the fans on the outside looking in, they don't see that per se, or they may not have knowledge of that, a lot of times at the start of the season, fans want to ask, well, what's going to be our identity, or, what type of schemes or whatever, but they kind of forget that Coach Saban at the end of the day, he's going to want to see what he wants to see. And it's just a matter of if we can actually get out there, and execute. Now, I do want to ask because, my brother in particular, he talks a lot about Scott Cochran. I think he was there when you were there too, right?
Cochran was there. He was there.
Yeah. So then what role do you feel like that play? I mean, because I almost feel like we're still kind of missing that. Do you feel like that's maybe a factor as well with how the guys show up on the field?
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it. I mean, Cochran was another guy that just telling you what you need to do and what you were doing wrong and how you can be productive on the field. I mean, he actually helped coach off a lot of coaching off the field because you had a lot of guys that didn't want to be there. And he was pushing them to stay there and like, man, you need to just work it out and do what you need to do to get on the field. You just work your butt off and show Coach Saban that you can go out there and play. He was one of those type of coaches, and I think that helped a lot of guys off the field.
Yeah,
And I think
I think so too.
I don't know the new strength and conditioning guy, but I don't know what kind of role he plays in those guys' life. But just around his facility, it was a lot of people just helping other people out to stick around. But now you got the transfer portal, and if a coach get on you too hard, guys be ready to cut, and leave and get gone because they feel
Yeah.
they can go somewhere else to play. It's
Yeah.
not like when we played, we had to stay there and just stick it out through the thick and thin, through the rough times.
Yeah. But you know what though, that right there, that says a lot about heart. I think, when you were there and the players then at that time, because you didn't even looking at the fact that we didn't have NIL at that time. And now I think I just heard that in the state of Georgia, now high school players are able to get their hands in NIL. So now they're getting more exposed to it, early on. And I'm interested to see where that go, because I know when you were at Alabama, we didn't have NIL, we didn't have the transfer portal. Do you think that NIL is playing a factor into maybe the guys, choosing certain schools or leaving?
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, where you can get the most money to take care of your family. I mean, who wouldn't go to a school that's offering a heck of a lot of money to take care of the family? That's the main purpose why you go to college anyway, to make money and to get a scholarship so you can go either play on in the NFL
Yeah.
or do something better with your life. So most definitely, I know it plays a factor.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, remind the viewers about I remember you had a game-winning touchdown against Texas A&M. Now, can you recall that, and can you tell the player or the fans about that and just what that felt like in that atmosphere and what you felt like enabled you to succeed at that level?
Yeah, the atmosphere was crazy. I mean, and I remember we was on the side. I think Coach Saban had just called a timeout, and I think AJ he calls this player like, man, I promise you, Coach, it'll work. Like Coach Saban agreed to it, and so we ran the play, and what do you know? I was wide open, scored the game-winning touchdown, but we did have to go back out and play defense for a little bit. So you was wondering if it was going to be the walk-off touchdown or was we going to go into overtime.
Right. That's dope. That's really dope. Yeah, no, y'all were hungry. Y'all look, y'all used to eat. Y'all didn't leave no crumbs on that field. Like honestly, look, man, when you were there, like that era, and I don't believe that it's over. I just think that it's been a matter of regrouping. We used to be so excited. Like me personally, I would literally plan my weekends around Saturday. Whatever time we had games, I needed to be free and available because I knew we were gonna eat. Like I didn't even have to order food because we was finna eat in that game. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just a whole different vibe, man. But I feel like we're getting back to that. Now I do want to know, what are your predictions as far as our game this weekend? I mean, we're going into Texas A&M. You know, I don't even know if they're still ranked anymore, but they won a couple notable games. How do you think it's going to go?
They might be. I think they are ranked. They will possibly be ranked by the end of this week. But I think we're just going. I don't have any predictions. I don't care. A win is a win to me. I just want the team to come out with the W. But like I said, I just want to see the guys go in there and keep improving every week, like get better every week and finding ways to win games. That's the big thing to me. Like I don't ever want to see us lose, but when we do, I just tell people, man, we got to regroup and go back to the drawing board and work on just playing physical and being smart with our choices.
Yep. I agree with that. I like that too. It's just, you find a way to win, and that's really the heart and the mind of a champion. But everyone has to be on that same page. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely agree with you. Now, do you have, I guess, any social media or anything that you want to, tell the viewers where they can find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Snapchat. I have a TikTok, but I don't really use it.
Oh, yeah, TikTok is it?
Yeah, so you can find me on a couple platforms, but I'm not a real big social media user. I just like to get on there, look around and see what people are doing and talking about.
Okay. I like that. Well, I keep wanting to call you Nudie because I remember that's what people were calling you when you were at Bama. I really appreciate you joining tonight. And I definitely want to have you back on at some point. But thank you for sharing your perspective. I'll let you go from here, but we're definitely going to have you back on soon.
All good. I'll be waiting.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and good luck with your coaching.
All good. Thank you, and roll tide.
Roll tide. Thank you. All right, guys, and we have another guest. Look, we got him back to back. Like I said, tonight is going to be lit. We got guests on deck. We have another guest that I'm not sure y'all might have heard of him. I don't know how y'all going to feel because he's a writer. He's a sports writer for Texas A&M. So we have to, show him some grace, be nice to him because he is a graduate from the University of Alabama. He graduated in 2016. His name is Cole Thompson, and if he is here, let's go ahead and bring him. Look who it is, Cole Thompson. Hi, how are you?
Good. It's always a fun weekend for me because either way I win in a bit of a sense because I get to either write a good story and that gets me a lot of clicks and that helps me pay a lot of bills, or Alabama wins and then either way I still get to go ahead and celebrate with the tie.
Exactly. And so I was telling the fans and the viewers, the supporters, that you're with allaggies.com. Now, I do want to ask, okay, so you graduated from the University of Alabama in 2016. How did you end up at Texas A&M, and how did that feel?
It was funny because I started in college the same year that A&M started in the SEC. So I got welcomed into Alabama football by Johnny Manziel catching a football and then beating us 29-24. And that got to live in my brain for the next year and a half. And that was always fun. But, you kind of go where the job takes you. You have to go in with an unbiased mind. You just have to talk about the facts and what are the facts. And unfortunately, right now, what the facts are is that I found my way into the SEC and I bounced around from place to place. And that led me to College Station to be able to talk about not just really A&M, but the SEC in general. So I'm very lucky I get to cover multiple teams in the SEC. One of them is A&M. Allaggies.com is where you can check out all my work. But I just try to keep an open mind with everything. I call it like it is. And so far, most of the time, I call it where Alabama walks away victorious.
Well, and you know what? I like that. Now, I'm not as generous as you. I am pretty biased. So, but you know what? I own up to that, and I take that on. So I don't know if I could be as courageous as you to maybe work with a different SEC team. But now, with the conferences going away, it may not be as big of a deal per se, starting next year, but we'll see. So I did want to get your perspective now, specifically about Texas A&M. So you write about Texas A&M and you see, that their starting quarterback, Connor, he got injured in their game against Auburn, right? And so he's out for and he's out for the rest of the season, I believe, right?
He is, yeah. So they moved over to Max Johnson, who I will say, at least, when there was the competition going on throughout fall camp, Jimbo Fisher was very adamant that this was a very good problem to have, that both of these guys could start. And you got to remember that Max Johnson is not just your average backup. He spent 2 years at LSU. He actually, his very last game at LSU, beat A&M by a 28-yard touchdown pass to Jarray Jenkins that set LSU to the play, sent LSU to a bowl bid and set A&M from their first 9-win season during a regular season year, which was a very big deal at the time. And he started 3 games last year before he ended up breaking his thumb in his throwing hand, and they went back to Haynes King and later Connor Wigman. So he's got some starts under his belt.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that he transferred from LSU, just to kind of show that experience that he had, even if it wasn't a lot. Now, I do think that at least just kind of looking at the numbers, comparing Connor to Max, it seems like Max, he might be that better runner to some degree, I think, in comparison to Connor. It'll be interesting to see how he shows up on that field, because I think that he came in, not maybe, I don't know if it was like right before, right after halftime when Connor got injured in the game against Auburn, but he played the full game, full Arkansas game. And so I know that was probably, a challenge for him. But it'll be interesting to see how they show up in the game this weekend, because personally, I don't think that he's going to make a lot of passes downfield. What I noticed when they played Arkansas and Auburn, they didn't really try a whole lot of that. And I think it's more so when they're playing the teams with better secondaries, for example, they may attempt those shorter passes, kind of rely on their tight ends and maybe even certain running backs who are pretty good with catching. And so from your perspective, I do want to kind of understand what I know that you're kind of like having to not necessarily play both sides, but you have to be gracious to both Texas A&M and Alabama. But how do you see this game going this weekend, being that we're coming to Texas A&M and some of the struggles that we've had early on?
Well, there's a couple of things to take away. With Max, the biggest thing is that he doesn't have the same type of arm strength. He's not a howitzer type of dude. When you watch Connor throw the football, it's seamless. He can make a 35-yard throw look like a 75-yard throw, and just it is on the money every single time. But that doesn't mean that Max does not have good arm strength and he doesn't have good command of the offense. They've really taken a liking to Bobby Petrino. And Bobby this past year said on multiple occasions that he wasn't going to put them in situations that they didn't feel comfortable. So he had game plans set aside that were only utilized for Max Johnson if Max was the quarterback. And the same thing could be said about Connor when Connor won the starting job. The biggest thing right now is that you look at the wide receiver core for A&M and even the tight end play. They are just loaded. And this is exactly what you want to see, especially when you get the number 1 recruiting class in the country in 2022. You get those guys and those FTS feed the studs, as Bobby Petrino says, active and able and very vocal in the locker room. And a lot of them are making plays. Noah Thomas is a 6'6" howitzer who literally can be unguardable inside the red zone. Evan Stewart, he's got that vertical presence that can turn any 25-yard route to a 55-yard route. You got the veteran in Anaya Smith. I mean, the guy's been there for a while. I know that a lot of A&M fans, a lot of Alabama fans are not that happy with what was said on Monday from Anaya Smith, but, he's allowed to have his own opinion, and we're not going to get into that just yet. We can probably later if you really want to, but he is a security blanket. He has always been one of the better route runners for this team. He's always done an exceptional job after the catch, and more specifically, he is a vital part of their special teams. Last week, he had the 82-yard punt return for a touchdown, and he also had another punt return that went, I think it was like 45 yards, and he was a cutaway from getting back-to-back punt returns, so he's effective. They have weapons that are going to be able to utilize and move the sticks on any given instant, and that's a major plus if you're Max Johnson, because you're worried more so about the chemistry and the consistency of keeping drives alive rather than going ahead and taking those deep shots. And if you do that, what could happen is for Alabama, if they don't get off the field quickly, they are going to have to rely heavily on either the passing game with the deep shots downfield, which is very evident that Jalen Milroe, albeit he is probably limited as a passer in terms of you want him throwing probably anywhere between 25 to 26 times a game, but he can get it downfield. I mean, you look at the wide receivers for Alabama right now. 4 of them are averaging 19.8 yards after the catch. And then you have another 2 that are averaging 14 yards. They're ranked second in the SEC, only behind Ole Miss in terms of yards per play, yards per reception. So the one thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that if you're Alabama, you don't allow yourself to be in that situation where you could potentially have your wide receivers being met up with a very good secondary led by Damani Richardson and led by Tyreek Chappelle and Josh DeBerry, not to mention a good pass rush that's going to eliminate and add a ton of pressure, whether it be from the linebacker spot with Torian York or Edgerrin Cooper, who both have now had back-to-back weeks of sacks. And then, of course, you have the other guys coming off the edge like Fadil Diggs, Walter Nolan up the middle. That's the main thing, is that if Alabama really wants to win this game and keep it not even, I would say, close, just really kind of blow the doors off of A&M, you got to get a lot of 3-and-outs. You can't allow Max to build a rhythm, because once he's in that rhythm, it's very clear that he's not going to get out of it. And from the running standpoint, it's always funny that we talk about it, because if you're in the A&M press box, every single time you see Max run, you're like, oh, he can go for a minute. But you're also like, close your eyes and go, please just slide. Like you cannot force the next quarterback to come in, because quarterback has been one of the major flaws of A&M because they're always injured.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I'm glad that you brought up the defense, because what we hear a lot is Texas A&M's D-line, and just how good they are. And so just, me this week, just kind of thinking about the game and just what we're working with right now, we have seen some improvements on our side in terms of Bama's offense and Jalen Milroe. But I am thinking, that this particular game is going to be a good test for Jalen Milroe, but also just to kind of see our coaching for what it really is, our O-line, because if they're let's say they're, linebackers, they're edge rushers, Jalen's not going to have a lot of time to just hold on to that ball. I think that they're going to probably apply a lot of pressure. And so we're going to have to be ready to get that ball off quickly, or just make quick decisions, whether that's him running the ball or him, handing it off, whatever they decide to do. But I do think that that's a critical point, is that their wide receivers, they're pretty darn good. Now, I don't know if Max is going to want to really throw, amongst our secondary. I mean, that, decides to do that, then we'll just see what happens.
It's going to be fun, because you don't have many times where you get a top 10 cornerback in Kool-Aid McKinstry that's going to be back for another year. And then you get another guy in Terrion Arnold, who did a pretty good job after rebounding from that pass interference call against A.D. Mitchell that led to a touchdown in the Texas game in week 2. But from Jalen's standpoint, Jimbo Fisher actually brought this up, and I thought it was really evident. And if you go back and you watch the film, it's clear. Part of the reason why you see Alabama have such success with the deep ball accuracy is not just because he's got a great arm that can go a country mile and basically turn into Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. But the other thing that's really important is that when the wide receivers are spread out as deep as they are, it opens up the running lane for Jalen to be effective in the open field as a rusher. And that's the main thing, which is very evident to his game. And that was what happened last year when he played against Arkansas and he had those 2 big runs. He had the 53-yard run this past week against Mississippi State, because if the wide receivers were going deep downfield and they were all basically 30 yards, and that created a running lane for him to be able to pick up the first and then even further. So part of the reason why it's important for Alabama to not allow A&M to get into the backfield is to allow those receivers to build that spacing, because you're going to eventually lose both, I would say, at least both your cornerbacks and both your defensive backs and your safeties to the wide receivers downfield. And then that nickel defender is going to be somewhere in between. So we're talking anywhere between the 12 to 15-yard marker. And depending on if you have a linebacker in coverage against, say, an Amari Niblack or one of your other tight ends, that leads to you now having basically a 4-man front and no one in the middle. You have one linebacker basically cover spying a guy in Jalen Milroe, and that's a race to the finish line. I mean, if you miss him at the point of attack, he's going for another 10, 15 yards. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens when Jalen has to be coached to make sure he either lets go of the ball in a timely manner or if he's able to stay behind the line of scrimmage, create separation downfield for his receivers, what that really is actually doing is it's opening the running lane for him to be effective and pick up another first down and kind of hit the reset button. And the reset button is really important there because of when you go back and you watch the Alabama-Texas game, it felt like there were times where he didn't hit that reset button after a score. And that led to multiple turnovers and that led to mistakes, especially the one inside the red zone where Texas capitalized. They got the 5-yard touchdown run for Jonathan Brooks. And that kind of swung momentum into Texas's way. The last thing you want to do is have those same mistakes because your offensive line is either not holding a block or he's not able to get separation downfield from his receivers. And A&M can capitalize because A&M does have an offense that is putting up an average of over 38 points. And at home, Kyle Field, which is really important, they're averaging 43 points per game at home. So that's another thing is that they can score and they can score quickly.
Well, we'll have to let them know that, this is our house, that whole 12th man on the field. I know they're going to be loud, but we can be loud too. And so I honestly, like I'm competitive in that regard. And I just think that we've had a lot of challenges, right? But I have personally seen improvement week after week. And that's what I want to. Now, when we talk about just certain situations or schemes where we can set Jalen up for success, but not just Jalen, our offense, I kind of think about that West Coast offense style play where we're throwing those short, fast balls. Like I said, we don't want to have Jalen hold on to the ball too long, but I think this will essentially eliminate Texas A&M's pass rush. And that's really what we want to do, whether that's like a screen pass or, maybe slants, whatever that is, we need to be able to get the ball off quickly. And I think that timing is going to be very important. I think that is going to have to make those quick reads. He's going to deliver those fast throws. That's why I say that this is going to be one of those games where Jalen is really put to the test. And I know we say that every single game, but I think particularly this game, more so because Texas A&M's linebackers, their defensive line is really, really good. There's a lot of experience that they have out there on the field. And so it's going to be a true test for him. But I think, like you said, the yards after the catch are going to be crucial. But I also think when you mentioned the O-line and just them, even the receivers, but particularly like that zone running scheme, I think that that's going to be crucial too, because at least in that regard, our O-line can create those holes, for Jalen to make those quick decisions, because that's something that kind of stood out to me when we played against Texas, where I felt like our decision-making wasn't that good. And also there were times where we were kind of forcing the ball. And I saw when we played Mississippi State that, I don't know if it's maybe Jalen's confidence is better now, but we didn't really see those errors. And so I think just our offensive linemen, them being able to, kind of, I guess block, not necessarily the player per se in front of them, but maybe more so the zone. I think that that's going to create those holes that we need. So maybe like play action passes, for example, or even like a spread offense. I think that we can set up our team to where, like when we say like the spread offense, having wide receivers kind of spread out so that we can spread out their line. And then even in that regard, that'll allow our running backs, Jase McClellan, Roydell Williams, different guys to get in there, get some of those rushing yards, set us up. Because the thing is, we want to capitalize on those first down drives, maybe pick up 6 yards, pick up 8 yards, right? And so I think that setting us up initially on every play, every drive, that's where we're going to see that success. I don't see Texas A&M scoring 40 points on us. Of course, I'm biased, but I do want to know from your perspective, how do you think this game is going to play out? What are your predictions, and who do you think are going to be the spotlight players for this game?
Well, let's start off and work our way back. So for starters, this is going to be a really intriguing matchup, in my opinion, based off of scheming purposes. So for starters, not only is it Jimbo Fisher versus Nick Saban, I mean, that's their own thing in itself. And what's always fun with that is Jimbo does have a relationship with Nick Saban. They coached together when they were at LSU. He was the OC, and he helped them win a national title in 2003. But he also understands what goes and what makes Nick Saban click. And that's a big deal when it comes to at least game scheming. But the thing about Nick, and the thing that's always been prevalent about Nick Saban, is his ability to adapt. And that's really what I think has made him stay as relevant as possible. Because we can go back to the early days of 2012, and they were just running it down your throat and basically playing bully football, where it was a Trent Richardson, and then it was a TJ Yeldon, and it was an Eddie Lacy, and then they would have the short to intermediate passes with a quarterback that was basically just being a game manager. You didn't need to take those howitzer shots. You didn't need to have exceptional receivers. And they did. I mean, guys like Amari Cooper, and then, of course, you get a few others like a Darius Stewart added into the mix, and Calvin Ridley comes along. But eventually what Nick had to do was adapt to, this style of play will not work in the SEC as everyone else is starting to score a lot of points. So he goes, he hires Lane Kiffin, and Kiffin brings a new style of offense in, and then he tries to make it work with Brian Dable, and Dable helps him win a national title, and then Locke comes in, and Locke has a good time, and then Sarkisian comes, and Sark may honestly end up being the best of the coordinators because of his ability to play in that West Coast style of offense that you're talking about, but also not lose his laurels and stick to his guns about being a dynamic deep ball passer, but also having a good, efficient run game, which is something that I think that we know has been a big evidence of Alabama's success, whether it be Derrick Henry. You can go back to the recent years of Najee Harris. You can go to Brian Robinson. So he's always been able to adapt to what works. And what works right now is knowing that you have a quarterback that can throw deep, but does have a bit of accuracy issues, which can lead to turnovers. So we have to trust the run game. And what we want to do is basically get you tired by the fourth quarter. That way we can run down your throat. From a defensive standpoint, it's a very good matchup in favor of Alabama because of you don't know exactly what you're going to get with Max Johnson. You know, Max did play against Alabama in 2020 and then also in 2021. And there was a mixed result in both of those games. But at the same time, it's a new offensive line and it's a new wide receiver core. And those are things that are going to be evident in this matchup, regardless of what you think of just level of standard. And I don't think that it's at that point of where you go, oh, okay, well, this is the new big rivalry in the SEC because of, again, I mean, there's so many good damn games. It pisses me off that, you know, when you look at the future of the SEC, like you're not getting Georgia and Auburn anymore. Like that's a must see every single year. And then you lose out on potentially the third Saturday in October. I mean, everyone knows that that's such a good game between Tennessee and Alabama. And then you add in now, you know, Texas A&M with the mix, and you have the biggest cocktail party. So it's not at that level, but the last few years you have seen Alabama and Texas A&M give each other fits and bouts, and it's happened in both able standards. Like you've seen it in Tuscaloosa last year. Neither starting quarterback was out there. It was Haynes King and it was Jalen because of it was Bryce was out and Max was out in that game. And it went right down to the wire. I mean, Alabama got up really early, and they kind of allowed A&M to work their way back in. And then if not for that Evan Stewart breakup at the line of scrimmage as time expired, they probably would have came out and won. And then in the same token, Alabama got hot, then A&M got hot, then they allowed Alabama to work their way back into Kyle Field. Then Zach Calzada had the drive of his life and connects with Anaya Smith, who, again, we all know about. And then they allow that one big play that sets up the Seth Small field goal, and Jimbo Fisher makes history as becoming the first former assistant to beat Nick Saban. So these games don't really have a right game plan. It's just how do you make sure that you stay the course and don't allow your opponent to work their way back in, whether it be getting stops on third down or forcing turnovers, or don't allow a big special teams play like a 96-yard return by Devon A-Chain, because that also plays a major factor in not just setting the tone, but also in swinging the momentum to another side. And that happened in 2021. It's going to be close. I really do think that because of what's at stake too with this game, it's first place for the SEC West. And not only that, it's potentially the inside track for A&M to get to the SEC championship game, or it really is the inside track for Alabama, because Alabama, without question, would already have the two wins over Ole Miss and over Texas A&M, to where if both of them were 11-1 at the end of the year or 10-2 at the end of the year, they hold a tiebreaker. So you know that you're going to get the best out of both of these teams, and you have to get the best out of both these teams because of what's at stake. And also, to be fair, and this is not me being from a beat reporter standpoint or just seeing the SEC, but A&M's a little ticked off that they're unranked going into this game, and I think that they have an absolute reason to be after getting back-to-back wins over Arkansas and Auburn when, you know, at least one game was ranked by Alabama when it was Ole Miss, but then Mississippi State. I mean, it's like at that same level of, okay, well, why are we not ranked for this game? So they realize that they're getting up and that they have to play up to Alabama standard. But for Alabama, it's plain simple. Just don't play down to anybody else's standard. You're Ala freaking Bama. You're supposed to be that team. And if you are that team, then there's a good shot that this does go down to the wire with Alabama keeping the edge. I would say that right now, if I were to be a betting man, only because of I have to be able to see what this rushing defense can do. Because you already saw what would happen when you got the deep shots down the field and the miss open field tackling against Miami. I think that Alabama wins this game. But I do think that it will come down to the wire as it has been the last 2 years. I do think this game will come down to one major momentum shifting play, whether it be a pick six or a punt return or any one of those instances. It's going to happen that way. And I also think that it is going to show you that Texas A&M is on the come up, because of, at least you can start to say to yourself, this is a team that finally is able to hang with us. Because there was a few years ago where it was 49-0 going into halftime back at Bryant-Denny Stadium, and I was at that game. And now we're seeing these close matchups to where talent-wise, there's a little bit of a drop-off between Alabama's offense and Texas A&M's defense, or Texas A&M's defense and Alabama's offense. I think that that's really what occurs. Whoever gets the momentum swing in that one play, they're the ones that walk away with the win.
I got you. I agree with you. I think that, like you said, the momentum, I do believe that we may see, I would be happy to see us get a good lead early on. That means that we're going to have to show up and really play and not have those issues that we've been having.
But you can't allow them to come back in. That's the main thing. Exactly.
You know, and that's my thing is you play all 4 quarters. I don't care if we're up by 13. We'll make it 20, you know, just keep going, keep playing. Let's get this W. And I think that this is going to be the statement. And I think it is going to come down to, you know, it was good that Ole Miss beat LSU. I think from the West perspective, that lines, and it puts us in, I think we're in the right position to where beating Texas A&M, even if it's by 3 points, it's going to mean something. And I think we really are on that path to going to Atlanta, you know, that first weekend of December. And I still think that we still have the opportunity to make it in the top 4. There are a lot more notable games across the board and across the conferences. So I think the USCs and the Notre Dames, Ohio States, Penn States, like there's still a lot of opportunity for Alabama to get back in there. I'm still keeping my eye on the prize, and I hope the guys are too. But I do want to thank you, Cole, for joining. I mean, I think your insight and just you being literally an insider for Texas A&M, but also having that Alabama knowledge. I can still hear it in your voice that you are still an Alabama fan, always will be. And so, but I understand your position. But I really do appreciate you coming on and just sharing your knowledge and just sharing that, you know, that passion that you know, it's good to hear, particularly on your side and with what you do as a writer. And so I definitely want to thank you for joining, but I do want to ask, do you have any social media where, you know, our viewers can find you?
Yeah, and before I get going, just for any Alabama fan out there, just remember this. This is one of the more incoherent years when it comes to college football, where there is no dominant team. There's a lot of good teams. There's a lot of good teams this year. And the pathway to make it to the college football playoff is alive and well for whichever side walks away with the win in this game. And primarily to get to Atlanta, because you are seeing the mishaps with Georgia. Georgia has been one of the more dominant defensive lines in college football for years. They rank 67th defending the run. So there is an opportunity, because they played the 4 teams, my apologies, with the leading rushers in the SEC, to find a way to trip up along the way and find an answer of how they can be beatable. But at the same time, because of the way that the Pac-12 is built, where cannibalization is going to happen, where it feels like that you're hitching your wagon to one of 2 teams in the ACC, I think you got to include Miami at this point, because Miami, at least right now, is sitting at 4-0, and they seem to have a good pathway to at least make it to Charlotte.
Yeah.
Big Ten, there's going to be a team. There's going to be at least one that's there, whether it be Penn State, whether it be Michigan, whether it be Ohio State. They're going to survive. Notre Dame still has an out-of-chance shot. If they get the upset over USC, they can still survive. Just the overall pathway right now for Alabama or for A&M or for anybody in the SEC is alive and well. So just don't lose hope, even if it is a close game, because at the end of the day, all you need is just one good matchup to set clarity and not have parity in the sport. If you want to give me a follow, at Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter. If you want to go ahead and read my work, it's owlaggies.com. And if you want to go ahead and listen to my radio show, I'm on every single day. I have a YouTube channel at Mr. Cole Thompson. You can subscribe. We talk all college football. We talk NFL. We talk MLB. We talk NBA. We do it all. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cole, for joining. And I'm going to have you back on soon.
I hope so. I can always be able to talk any college football you need.
Awesome. Well, thank you and have a great night.
You as well.
All right. Bye. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. I mean, we had some great guests. I think that having Cole and just hearing his, I can hear him. I can still hear that passion. I know y'all probably heard it too, and I'm glad to hear both perspectives. I do think that Texas A&M. He mentioned a couple of their wide receivers like Evan Stewart and a couple others. I think Anias. We have some competition this weekend, but I do think that we're going to come out with the W, even if it's a 1-point game, even if we win by 1 point, it's still a win. And so I just think that, our guys need to be focused. I think that we all need to play at a high level, and we need to play all 4 quarters. I don't care if we're up by 21. We need to continue going. And I just think that, who knows, we may see Ty Simpson out there in the 4th quarter. I'm not putting anything past us getting that W and moving forward and continuing to win. Now, Cole mentioned Miami, and Miami is playing really well. We have to remember too, I think Florida State is ranked number 4 right now. Florida State, I think that's actually that's their last game. And so I want to say Florida State and Miami still have to play. That's going to be a great game. We know Florida State still have a couple more games, where there could be some shakeups along with Oregon, everyone else that's ranked ahead of us, Washington, Oregon, all those guys, Florida State, Texas, all of them, there are opportunities for them to lose. And I think what's going to happen, and we see this a lot of times, the teams that, needless to say, that aren't usually in the top 4 or even in the top 10, rather, for that matter, a lot of times it's those unranked teams that they end up losing to. I know that Indiana tends to give, Ohio State and, the Michigans of the world, they tend to give them some type of competition. But of course, we have Penn State as well. But then you have Maryland knocking on the door, and they're undefeated right now. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised to see, one of these top 4 teams go down to an unranked team. I mean, Texas still has Kansas State. Texas still has Texas Tech. I think they still have TCU. There are some notable games this weekend in particular. I think we're going to really start to see things, kind of play out around that, maybe our LSU weekend, like that first weekend in November, or even around October 31st when the first playoff committee rankings come out. And so I just think that we have a lot to look forward to still. I know I'm more of an optimistic type of person, but I like to see things from a growth perspective. And so all is not lost after week 2 when we lose to Texas. We're improving, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. I do think that we will be in Atlanta. I think, like Cole mentioned, Georgia, they're defensively, and we understand why, they had a lot of their good players go to the draft, and, a lot of us did. And so we saw them struggle against UAB and a couple other teams. And so I think that we can, capitalize off of that. I don't even know if it's going to be them in the SEC championship from the East. It could be Tennessee. They may gradually get a little better too with Milton at quarterback. But I think we have a lot to look forward to. I'm excited about this weekend. I know that you all are as well. I do appreciate everyone joining and just, engaging in the chat and, just being lively. And I just appreciate, the camaraderie and how we all kind of come together. And even if we don't necessarily share the same opinions, we all still say Roll Tide at the end of the day. You better say Roll Tide at the end of the day. But thank you for joining. I really appreciate the support, and be sure to join next week at the same time. We may have a different guest on, who knows, but we'll definitely have some hot topics to discuss. I'm going to start, kind of hitting a little bit more on our keys to win. I mentioned a couple things as far as our offense, as far as like a zone running scheme or like a spread offense, different things that we can do, the screen passes, the slants, different things that I think that we can do to kind of maybe play off of some of their weak points in a sense, or maybe to even expose them. Because at the end of the day, Texas A&M, they beat Arkansas, they beat Auburn, but they didn't win against Miami. And so I think that we can kind of look at that too. And one more thing that I noticed is that Texas A&M quarterback Connor, now he was the starting quarterback. He's the one that got injured. He's out for the season. It was a foot injury. I noticed that Max, their second string quarterback, even between this season and last season, he's gotten sacked a lot more than Connor. Now, the reason why this is important is because, to me, this shows that this is not an offensive line issue. It seems to me like it's more so like a decision-making / awareness concern with Max Johnson. And so because of that, I think that we need to capitalize off of that, because we would have seen maybe similar results, to Connor, as far as him being sacked a lot as well. And so I do think that we need to capitalize off of that. His decision-making, we can expose that a little bit. I think it's awareness as well. I think that we need to be blitzing them all night and, just apply pressure up front and make sure to cover their receivers and their tight ends. Now they have a couple running backs who also can catch the ball pretty well. So we need to just make sure that we're physical all night. We need to keep doing what we've been doing and just be consistent. So thank you all for joining. Roll Tide. I hope you all, enjoy the game this weekend if you're there physically or if you're watching. And we will see each other next week, same time, same place. So Roll Tide and God bless.